Hey, WNOV family, this is Will Martin, and you're listening to The Difference on WNOV. We try to be the community's voice and to actually bring you a number of voices to make sure we're educating our people about opportunities and public policy and all sorts of other things going on. And there is an election. I know people are focused on, next year will be governor and lieutenant governor and all those sorts of things, but there's an election before that election comes up. It is for Supreme Court, and we've got a guest here today who have not only been here to educate us on law previously, but is now coming with a new job title, that of candidate. So the Honorable Judge Maria Lazar, welcome back. This is your third time here with us.
Yes, it is, and I hope it's not the last time. I hope I come back
Absolutely,
more.
absolutely. As long as they let me in,
Excellent.
you got to weigh in.
Excellent. Yes, I'm now a candidate for the state Supreme Court. April 7th, 2026 is the election for an open seat, and I am absolutely wonderfully excited to be running.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we've known you now for a little bit. You come in and we've quizzed you on all sorts of legal issues,
Yes.
and you have been gracious enough to come in and talk to us about some of those issues as well. And so now you're coming as a candidate. So let's back up for some of the folks who maybe have not gotten a chance to hear you before. Tell us who you are and a little bit about how you come to this day.
All right. Well, I came actually to the position as a judge a little bit oddly. I originally go way back. I'm a Wisconsin kid, born and bred here. Actually, born in Milwaukee. Lived my whole life here, but for 3 years when I went to Georgetown Law School.
Well, okay, we can.
So that's an excuse. I did have to live there. But I went to school here, went to Mount Mary College, and then went to Georgetown, as I said. I then spent about 20 plus years working in private practice, business law here in Milwaukee. And after that, I got an offer to work for the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office in Madison. I was there 5 years. And I loved it. I loved serving the people. It was a great job. I don't think I would have left, but for looking around and thinking about things and how I wanted to continue to serve the state. I had a lot of interesting cases and a lot of big cases and small cases, but it was a case about foster children where it just absolutely broke my heart. So I had 2 little foster kids that a party wanted to split up and separate forever, and a brother and a sister. And the judge in Madison, Dane County, on the record in front of everyone, told me the law did not matter, and I lost. And it was unbelievably devastating. I remember it was around the 4th of July, and I went home and I just sat on the couch thinking, one, I'd failed that little boy, but 2, how can a judge say that to me? So I decided that was it. So I ran for judge in my home county of Waukesha. I was elected unopposed. I served 7 years there, one and then part of a second term. And then the seat came up on the Court of Appeals. I ran for that. I had an opponent. The Court of Appeals District 2 has 12 counties, and I've been serving there for 3 years now. I love it. I do know people say it's probably not their type of job. I mean, I read stacks of briefs and I write opinions, and that's all I do every day, all the time.
I know one of the days that you came in to talk to us, you had come back from a conference that was just on writing.
Yes.
Writing legal opinions. And so, so how many years have you been a judge between being a
Almost
circuit
10.
court and okay,
Almost 10.
almost 10,
Yeah.
and
Actually 10.
Okay,
So
beautiful.
Yeah.
And how many years did you work in the Department of Justice as well?
There I worked for 5 years.
Okay, so you've got 15 years worth of
Working for the state.
very specific experience in terms of either on behalf of the people of the state, being in terms of prosecution from that side. As well as being a judge and making these we've talked a number of times that you come in about the really difficult kinds of cases that come before you, including some of these terminations of parental rights that you talked about.
Right.
Those being some of the most difficult to kind of grapple with, as well as you talked about
mental commitments.
Thank you. There
Yeah.
we go. I was trying to remember the technical
Yep.
term for this, and just the process of grappling with these issues, because as you pointed out, you're dealing with real people's lives.
Yep. Everyone thinks about judges making decisions on criminal matters or big civil matters, contracts, and it actually sometimes comes down to those little cases that you have to look at where you're making a decision about someone's liberty and what they're going to be doing for the next 12 months of their life, or what to do with a parent who shouldn't be a parent of a child, and seeing the aftermath and the horribleness of how sometimes I can't understand how people treat children. It just, when I was on the bench in criminal, when I was giving my sentences, I'd always say something to the effect of, the people that I stood up the most for were children, the elderly, and then people who just couldn't stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had someone in my court who was going to be sentenced for an offense against one of those three groups, sometimes people would sub on me because they know there's just a sense of, you have to protect as a judge that part of the people.
Let's step back. Sub on you means that they decided, hey, I think I'm going to do better with a different judge.
Absolutely.
I'm not coming in that courtroom.
Absolutely. So when you first get assigned a judge on any case, civil, criminal, family, juvenile, whatever it is, you have a certain amount of time in the beginning as a party to say, for no reason whatsoever, you don't have to explain, to just say, I don't want that judge.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a different judge. Once you've been in the case for a while, you can't do that. But when I first started in criminal, I was keeping track of the number of substitutions I'd get on me, and it was amusing. That dwindled down. There was a sense that people didn't know me, and then when they got to know who I was, how I was as a judge, and the respect I showed everybody, you got a fair shot in my court, because the law mattered. So that dwindled way down. But there's still some people who would feel that if their client did something absolutely horrible to a child, I probably wasn't the best person to have there.
Tell me, in the audience, why you got involved with the law to begin with. What is interesting to you about having become an attorney, having become a judge, having now become an appellate judge? What's interesting to you about it? What drew you to this as a career?
Well, and it actually goes back to when I was in fourth grade. So in fourth grade, I decided that my career, my dream job, the one I wanted to do more than anything in the world, was to be an archaeologist. I loved the thought of going out, finding dinosaur bones and things. And then I realized, one, I'm not very patient in that respect. Two, I hate the heat and things happen there.
Okay.
And three, this isn't really a career that a lot of people go into. And so I looked around at all the what I call the professions, medical, legal, and I'm not someone who can. I couldn't be a doctor. I'm not someone who can, give someone a shot or do anything like that. That's not me. I not me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at law, and my dad was in a legal a legal area at his job, and we'd talk all the time, and it must have influenced me and my family. I have two brothers, older and younger, and all three of us are lawyers.
Oh, wow.
So we're sort of the legal family, and it seemed to be a perfect fit. I liked looking at a profession where it was something that I could give back, but it was something where I could make a difference. And since I couldn't be a doctor, this was where I could make a difference, and I have loved it from day one.
Wow. And what is it about being a judge? What do you enjoy? You've now been a judge at two different levels of our system. Go ahead and answer this question, because I want to come back and let's just make sure that people understand how the system even works again.
Right. So the first level of our system are the circuit courts, state courts, and the counties.
Mm-hmm.
And I love being that type of judge because I actually saw the people, the attorneys and the parties would be in front of me, and I would make decisions that would impact that case, those individuals, and what was in front of me. The reason I looked up higher was I wanted to do more. I wanted to give back more. I wanted to not just make decisions that impacted that one case, but I wanted to right I loved writing when I was in the circuit court. I wanted to write and impact the law in the state of Wisconsin. So on the appellate court, which is the next level up,
and where you're serving currently,
right, there's 16 appellate court judges, and what we do is we write opinions and we set the law. And if someone doesn't like our opinion, they can ask the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, to look at it. And the state Supreme Court gets a lot of requests and does not take very many cases. So when they don't take a case, a petition, what I write or what other judges on the Court of Appeals writes, that's the law in the state of Wisconsin. So the reason I wanted to move there was to make more of an impact, to really hone what I was writing, to make it impactful for the state. And as to the switch from being a lawyer where I represent one side, one party, and I fight really hard for them, I love moving to the position where I look at both sides.
Yeah.
I look at the law, I look at the facts, I think about it a lot, and then I make a decision that while you may not like it because you haven't won, at least you'll always know that I was fair, legally correct, and based on the law, and a rational, reasonable decision.
Okay. Well, so you've had a chance to be a prosecutor on one side. You've gotten to be the circuit court judge, so you're the finder of fact, as you said to me. So you've educated me before on these previous. So the finder of fact, you're actually seeing the real folks in the one case, as you say, and making a decision about that. You now get a chance to have moved that next level, the appellate court, where you're now getting a chance to review the case.
Right. We correct errors.
Yeah. So you've gotten a chance to see the overall picture. And as you say, you're really creating a precedent for the state, right? Because most of the cases that are really heard at the appellate level, not at the Supreme Court level.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So now what is pulling you? You've been everywhere else in this system. What's pulling you now to the Supreme Court? What's calling you?
So in the last 2 or 3 years, I've watched our races for Supreme Court. And quite frankly, jump a little bit back. When I started out as a young lawyer, I looked at the Supreme Court and I sort of, they're your idols. You were in awe. These people were fantastically wonderful legal scholars. They really cared about the law and they really wanted to get it right. And in the last 3 or 4 elections for state Supreme Court, it's been political, partisan bickering. It's been a politicization of what's going on. In the last race, for example, how many $100 million or more dollars was spent? And did they answer the one question that's so important? And the answer is no. Did they ever say which person was a better judge? Which person will be a better justice on this court? Who has the merit? Who has the experience? Who should be there? No, it was which political party backed who and who's paying money for what, and which party is bringing in people to spend money on this race. And quite frankly, that appalled me. So I was more than happy to think about this for a little bit. But when Justice Rebecca Bradley decided that she wasn't going to run, and I give her kudos, she spent 10 years on a court where it may have been a little more difficult. And I said, this is my responsibility, my obligation to represent the state, to really maybe pull it back and tell people in the state, my campaign is going to be one simple, easy question. Do you want a judge on the state Supreme Court, or do you want a politician? My opponent has been and was a politician. I have never been. I am a judge. I have always been headed towards being a judge, even in all my legal roles. I've spent 10 years on the bench. I'm going to keep doing that. We need to go back, to pull it back, to get rid of the rhetoric, which is quite frankly killing the state. We need to go back and say, who do we want as our judge on the state Supreme Court? And it's an easy answer.
Beautiful. So I know that this is just 6 months away.
Yes.
Right. So this is 6 months sounds like a lot of time. It's really a very short amount of time for a state that is 66,000 square miles.
72 counties.
Absolutely. And so you just announced literally this week, what's
October 1.
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. So you're already in here to see us. And what is it about this time around? I mean, this is coming. You're jumping into the race much later than has typically happened. And so, how do you get yourself geared up? What's before you now? What's your plan for the next 6 months laid out here?
Well, I know it seems like a late start, but it's really not. There's sort of in Wisconsin, there's a malaise that happens in the summer where everyone doesn't really want to hear any more ads. They don't want to watch television or hear the news and hear people saying
Jermaine,
things like that.
The malaise is just people chilling out. I just want to be clear that's about people don't want to be bothered.
So I was
after 24 election, they don't want to be bothered for a little while.
So I was to say that the dog days of summer, everyone just wants to chill out. They don't want to hear people, and especially last election. I mean, I literally stopped listening, or when something was on television, I was flipping it off. I didn't even want to hear it anymore. I turned the sound off.
I think we all need therapists after.
Yeah. So and the sad thing is, we're gearing up that's going to happen next November, and everyone's going to start hearing about that race and those races. But this is a race in April. It's a nonpartisan race, and it's not too late.
Wait, say that again.
It's a nonpartisan race, which means no politics on either side. We don't declare that we are a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, Constitution Party. I don't even know what the rest of them are.
Yeah.
We don't declare any of that. So it's very important in April. All those elections are for people and individuals and positions that don't relate to a political party. But if you look at every other race we've had in, I'd say 4 years, the political parties have dominated the airwaves. The political ads have destroyed our state. I mean, the rhetoric is dangerous. It's dangerous. I mean, you look, what was it now? A little more than 3 weeks ago, Charlie Kirk. You've got circumstances where people are so inflamed and impassioned, and it's politically based. This is a judicial race. It is the question of judge versus politician. It's not a question of which political party we vote for or my opponent who's been in. But it's also important, and one of the reasons I decided to run as well was that I'm really very disturbed by the fact that the big question people ask judges when they run, they used to say, "Oh, are you tough on crime?" Which I always kind of laughed at, because it would be someone who's in the family court, and the answer is, well, yeah, they don't see a lot of crime there, so whatever. But now the question is, tell me what you're going to do in the future. And I was thinking about that a lot as I drove in today, and I thought, you know what? There's a reason why we didn't ask that question before, and there's a reason why we should never ask that question. How can you have a judge? You can have a politician. How can you have a judge tell you how they're going to rule on a case when the way a judge rules on a case is we look at the facts in that case, the very specific what happened, who did what, when did they do it, and we look at the law and we apply the two together. So how can you ever have a judge who could say, oh, if you bring a question about this law, I'm going to rule this way. You don't know the facts. You don't know how it applies to them. Judges can't do that. Ethically, we're not allowed to do that.
Right. It's actually against your code of ethics.
Code of ethics. But the bigger thing is...
And it's prejudging the case.
Exactly. But that's the point. No judge can actually honestly do that. But you know who can? A politician can go to the public and say, hey, elect me because I'm going to pass a law that says X, or I'm going to do this and that says Y. So they can do that. So everyone running for this position has acted like politicians, or been one. They've acted like a politician and said, hey, vote for me because wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'm going to do this. That's appalling. So that was one of my other reasons for running. And I know everyone in the public says, yeah, but we really want to know what you're going to do. And the problem is, in the past, we could honestly say to them, we don't know what we're going to do. I can tell you that I always look at the Constitution. I can tell you how I rule, but I can never tell you how I'm going to rule on a case that hasn't even been filed yet. Now, in the past elections, Candidates for this position have done the exact opposite. They've said, oh, I could say redistricting, I'm going to rule this way or that way, or anything you say, any type of case.
Well, abortion was one of the ones that has
abortion,
certainly.
appalling. So, and as to, I'll hit that in a second, but so they could say what they're going to do, but that was dishonest,
Mhm.
and that was non-judicial, and that was a politician speak.
Well, let me just ask you this, because I've been troubled about this ethics issue. There's a code of ethics.
Yes.
It applies to every judge and justice.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely.
So in the state of Wisconsin, it actually will say, here are the things that we just do not allow judges to do.
Correct.
And I believe that if you violate that and it comes before the panel,
yes,
you can then be disciplined as a judge for having broken the ethics code. Right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so in some ways, what we're talking about is people who are literally running for the Supreme Court,
breaking
who are
in
advance doing it. And so we've gotten now very used. If you are not running for as a justice to become a member of the Supreme Court of the state, and you ran in this way, would you end up having disciplinary action?
Well, so two ways to answer that. So if I were not running for a justice, I still can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you still can be brought up before a judicial commission. And the problem is that sometimes it's not, they don't follow through as much on that. And one of the big areas that judges have to deal with is something called recusal. I think we talked about that,
Mm-hmm.
which is where we personally say, hey, for example, so if I had a case and my brother is either the party or the lawyer, because we're all lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
I can't hear that case.
Right.
I can't hear that case because you'd say, well, of course she's going to rule in favor of her brother, or if I didn't like him, against my brother.
Mm-hmm.
But I like my brothers. So of course I would recuse. I'd say, no, I can't hear that. But I'm the one who makes that decision. Now, if you don't like what I do on the circuit court, you can go to my chief judge. Then you go up to the Court of Appeals. Then you go to the Supreme Court. But if you're on the Supreme Court and you say, I'm not going to recuse, even though I told you exactly what I was going to do, there's no one else to go to.
Right.
So,
and it seems like to me, the ethics issues don't seem to apply when justices as candidates run for the Supreme Court, when they're already promising.
They do apply, but they haven't been followed.
Okay. All right. But there's nobody to apply it to them, apparently, to discipline them.
Well, parties do complain, and parties have filed motions against justices on the Supreme Court and asked them to recuse, and it hasn't happened in some cases, and it has in others. Why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you violate the rules? And then why would you then be in a court where you can brush it aside and just say, well, too bad, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it doesn't matter. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Maria, Judge Lazar.
Yes, you can say Maria.
So Judge Maria Lazar. So, tell us, just in your estimation, what should we want in a justice? Right? You've been a judge now for 10 years. As we talked about earlier, you've had 5 years of being a prosecutor on behalf of the people of Wisconsin. What do you stepping back from this, what do you think a justice should have, should bring, should do?
Well, and that's funny you should ask that. I used to have little cards that told me that, but I can tell you. So a judge has to be, one, they have to be fair. They have to be impartial. They have to be someone who does their research.
Mm-hmm.
They also have to be someone who, and this is going to be a legal phrase, so I apologize, has an appearance of impropriety, has no appearances of impropriety. So what I mean by that is, even if I don't have a bias for a group, a person, an entity, if it looks like I do, I should step back.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing we need in the state, the one thing everyone needs in this state, is to have a judge and a court where they're confident that they're going to walk in, they're going to give their best case, and they're not going to know how that judge or justice is going to rule until they get the opinion. Mm-hmm. And when they get that opinion, they're going to say, darn it, I didn't prevail, but I understand why.
Yeah.
And they're not going to walk in saying, you know what? It really doesn't matter what I say because I know I've lost your vote and your vote and your vote and your vote. That's wrong. So you should have a justice up there where both sides are not sure where you're going to go, because you shouldn't be sure where you're going to go.
Well, I know where we're going to go. We're going to go on a break right now, and we'll be right back.
Perfect.
Hey, WNOV family, this is Will Martin, and you're listening to The Difference. And my guest today is now candidate Judge Maria Lazar, candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. We have an election coming up in April.
April 7th.
Oh, April 7th to be exact. So we're talking about almost exactly 6 months
Yes.
that we have left between this time. I was asking you just before the break about what should we all expect in a judge?
Right. And the key thing, and I this is a short time frame to respond, and I don't want to get all legal nerdy on you, but the key thing is to look at the judge's philosophy, as in how they rule, what they think is paramount, what's the most important thing. And I'm going to give you
It's the judicial philosophy.
Yes, I'm going to give you a short summary of mine and my opponents, but I also want to advise people to go to judgemarialazar.com.
Now, wait, how are we spelling all that?
Okay, so Judge, obviously, Maria has 2 A's, and Lazar has 2 A's. So MARIALAZAR.com.
Okay.
And to look up, because I have a long, detailed explanation, which you don't really want to hear now. So I'll make it really short and sweet.
Okay.
So my judicial philosophy is I actually look at the text of the Constitution and the statutes, and then I apply that and I interpret it. I do it in a line of what other judges do. This started with Justice Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court, now Justice Gorsuch, my 2 favorite justices. And it's a way that every judge should act, because we're supposed to say what the law is. And to do that, we have to look what was written and what's there.
And not what you want the law to be.
Never what you want the law to be. There's a case, and I won't throw the quote at you, except I'll say it's from 1803, where the U.S. Supreme Court at that time said, judges' only duty is to say what the law is. You do that by looking at what it is. Now, my personal views are mine. I don't ever use them as a judge moving forward in any case. I look at what actually is the law.
Yeah.
I like to say that my personal views kind of go behind my black robe, because if I like something or don't, it doesn't matter. I'm not the legislature. I'm one branch of 3 branches of government. And those other branches, they decide what the law, they decide how to write that law and what they're going to put in that law. All I do is interpret it and say if it's constitutional or legal. And the important point there is I can absolutely hate. And I can tell you there are cases and appeals where I've hated the way the outcome comes out. Personally, I've loved legally how I've written it, but personally, it's not my way of going or my way of thought. It's not my personal perspective. But that people have told me, very wise judge I first met when I first started, that you're not a real judge till that happens to you, where you don't like something. And the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Roberts has said that too, is that if we all just did what we wanted to, well, then we're not judges, then we're a super legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem I see in the state of Wisconsin. Our legislature is our legislature, and our governor is our governor. That's the executive branch. And our judicial branch is the check on all of them. And we all have our own lanes, and we're all supposed to do our own things. But if you have a judiciary or judges or justices who start saying, well, the law may say this, but what we think it really should be is this, you've lost everything. You have gone down a path of chaos. When our founders created the country, they said each branch is going to check the other one. Each branch has a zone of authority. Each branch should stay within that zone. We are seeing justices and judges go outside of that zone. Now, a key note here would be...
In other words, some of them are legislating from the bench.
Absolutely.
Is, I think, the way that some people would say it.
They are legislating from the bench. They are going there and they're saying, in essence, and the one thing I don't like is they're saying to people, I know better than you. I know better than the legislature, and I know better than what this law says, so it is X. That's wrong. And then you have my opponent in this race who, on her website, so I'm quoting her words, she specifically says her judicial philosophy is people-centered, grounded in making sure individuals get a fair chance in our courts and that their constitutional rights are protected. So when I read that, my first thought was, I really don't know what that means, because as a judge, I have never said I'm people-centered. I am law-centered. I'm legal-centered. Mm-hmm. I don't make sure people get fair chances other than they can present their case and make their best arguments. But It's not that you walk in and say, hey, I'm a poor person who deserves to have the law not apply to me, so don't let it apply to me. That I feel sympathy for the person personally behind my black robe, but I never let that come out in the courtroom.
Well, I think this comes back to about an issue of fairness, right?
Yes.
That if the law is supposed to be, the justice is supposed to be blind, I think that somebody has been pulling up the blinds off the eyes these last few elections, because we've not talked about everybody getting the same fair chance. We've talked about, as you say, candidates who've come out and already told people, this is where I stand on this issue. This is where I stand on that issue. To the extent that people are doing that, well, then why bother even bringing the case? Because you know how it's going to come at the end of the day.
And that's a concern that also was something that made me jump in this race as well, is that we can't have individuals. I mean, we take an oath when we become a judge that we will act without respect to persons. And I always thought that was the weirdest way to put it. But when you think about what they're saying is, if you walk in my courtroom and you are a company and you have millions of dollars behind you, and the other side is someone who has the law behind them and they have no money and they're there just fighting, I can't look at who has more money or who can afford 10 lawyers against one. I have to say, what is the law? And so I have to say, with my blindfold on, without respect to persons. I don't look at the person. I think I told you, maybe I didn't, that I once had a criminal case with a defendant who walked in, and I was sentencing him, and he had more tattoos than I've ever seen. Did I tell you this?
Mm-mm.
So he had tattoos all over his face, all over his neck, his arms, his hands. And there was a crime, and he was pled guilty, and I was going to sentence him. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not who you see. I'm more than these tattoos. And I don't remember his name, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Mr. So-and-so, I don't see your tattoos. I see what you've done, how you've rehabilitated yourself, and what protection I need to give to the community. That's all I see. So you need a judge who does that. You need a judge who's not based in one political partisan point of view,
Mm-hmm.
or not based in one area of the law. You mentioned abortion. I can talk about that as well.
Yeah. Well, so before you do that, I just want to come back to,
okay.
You said without respect to persons.
Without respect to persons.
Okay, that's part. So let's go back to what is that exactly from?
That's the oath that you take as a judge.
Okay, thank you. So this is
you're
the
going
oath.
to act without respect to persons.
Okay, so without respect to persons,
yes.
And then you have an opponent who flat out says
she's going to base it on people.
People-centered.
Yes, that's
right?
her quote, not mine.
Right. So the idea that you've got someone who's running to be a justice, who actually is already saying people-centered as opposed to law-centered.
Yes.
And the oath that your opponent would have to take, the same as everyone else, is without respect to persons. It just seems to me
she took that oath twice.
That's what
she took that oath as a circuit court judge. She was appointed, and she served in Dane County as a circuit court judge.
Okay.
She was appointed by the governor. She took that oath as the Court of Appeals judge when she was in District 4, when she won that seat. So the oaths mean something to me. And when you take that oath, you say that you're going to be someone who's faithful to the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin and the United States, and you're going to act without respect to persons. My opponent obviously has taken a wise, maybe in her sight, view that, hey, let's throw everything out the window. We don't need to have ethics. We don't need to follow my code. I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do. And I'm going to hope that the people in Wisconsin are not smart enough to say, enough is enough. You got to draw that line in the sand and say, this is it. This is a judicial race.
It's comforting if you get what you want sometimes on the front end, right?
Be careful.
So, exactly. So the idea that, hey, the person's on my side.
They are now.
Right. Exactly. But here's the problem is, it seems to me that the minute that the law no longer matters, right? The law is supposed to be the rules of the road. So we all know where we're supposed to be and what the consequences are, right? To the extent that you've got folks deciding which side of that equation they're on, sometimes that's, it might feel good on the front end. At some point, it's going to turn back around on folks.
And that's the danger. So if you have an activist court, that means if you have a court that's going to avoid the law and just do what's best for the people, I'm people-centered. So you have an activist court, and right now, you're okay with that because they're doing what you like too. Be really careful, because the next thing you know, that activist court is going to turn and say, yeah, maybe now we're going to do this. Not something you like anymore, but you can't complain. You didn't complain before. You don't care. You've already stacked this court. So now you're dealing with a court that's going to tell you, we know what's really good for you. Hey, you know what? No more paper bags, no more straws, no more whatever you want to say. And that court's going to tell you how to live your life. And we're Americans. We don't stand for that. And our judges are really important people in our society, but they're not supposed to act as legislators.
So it's a complete
disrespect. Because we can
disrespect.
vote legislators out really easily.
Right.
So this is a 10-year seat.
In fact, every 2 years for the assembly.
Yeah, we can get
and every
them out.
4 for the senators. But the idea that you could actually have folks on the court, it takes a great deal of restraint to be, in my opinion, a good judge, because you need people who understand I could do a series of things beyond the law, but I'm going to be constrained by the law. The law should be creating predictability, right? We should, between the law and the precedent of prior decisions you've made, we should know what the likelihood is of one side or the other prevailing. You still can bring up the issues, and maybe you bring up different issues among as part of that, but I should know in advance, hey, this is what the law is, and here's where the decisions have come. I should be able to act accordingly. When people are just making things up,
it's chaos.
Right, because should is not what the law is based on.
No.
Right?
Nope.
It either is or it isn't, or it's a gray area that needs to be resolved.
And you know what? Let's say the state Supreme Court follows the law and issues an opinion, and everybody hates it. Everybody hates it. Well, there's an easy answer. You go to your legislature and they change the law. And then that new law is what stands. You don't go to your judges and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do the legal law writing process. We're just going to have you write it out and tell us what to do. Well, then the next person is going to say, well, do I follow the law that's written? Do I follow the law that I think the court likes? Do I follow which law? It is absolute unbelievable chaos. And that's for either side. I don't advocate anybody going up and saying, I'm an independent, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, but I'm going to tell you what's best. That's why we elect politicians, not why we elect judges.
Right. And Maria, I was going to say the sentence. The term
is 10 years.
It
might feel like a sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's 10-year term.
It's a 10-year term.
Well, so 6 years. So circuit court judges and court of appeals judges serve for 6 years. And I think that's really important, because it basically took me a good year or more as a circuit court judge to figure out how to be a good judge. I mean, it takes you a while to take a step back from which side you're on. When you're the attorney, you're defending one side. When you're the judge, you have to put aside all that emotion, really be stone-faced, really not show your emotion, and make the decisions. So 6 years is a good time. But our state Supreme Court is 10 years. And that's maybe a good thing too, because it's a more important role. It impacts the state more. You work on more high profile in that it's changing the policy of the legal perspectives. It's saying this is how this law is interpreted, and that's important. So 10 years is a good amount of time. But if you're an activist judge, 10 years is a life sentence to the state of Wisconsin.
So it's the longest term
Yes.
of any elected office in the state of Wisconsin.
I think so.
Yeah.
Someone's going to come back and tell me there's one more, but I'm pretty sure it's the longest one.
Yeah, I don't know what else there could be. And then, really it's so long that's even more than even if a governor got elected twice.
Yes, you'd see two governors,
still
three
be,
governors.
Yeah, you'd still be in.
Three.
So I every once in a while, Jermaine, I just know out of the corner of my eye would just get into something. And then suddenly it's like, okay, I'm waiting for you. We got to go. So I think we're going to end up with another break right now. We'll come right back to this conversation.
AURN News. I'm Jamie Jackson. This week, President Donald Trump's words are drawing attention after a remark he made during a speech to senior military officers at Quantico, telling the audience that there are two N-words and you can't use either of them.
But I announced that, based on his mention of nuclear, and it was really a stupid person that works for him mentioned the word nuclear. I moved a submarine or two, I won't say about the two, over to the coast of Russia, just to be careful, because we can't let people throw around that word. I call it the N-word. There are two N-words, and you can't use either of them.
The president's N-word comment echoed a line he first posted earlier this year on his Truth social platform. For AURN News, I'm Jamie Jackson.
Here's a look at your updated forecast. Look for lots of sunshine for today with high temperatures reaching up into the middle 80s. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 65. Saturday, still very summer-like, mid-80s for high temperatures, that stretch of sunny weather continuing, and still looking sunny, dry, and warm on Sunday up to 82. Monday, though, a chance for some showers and storms, we're back to 74. I'm meteorologist Michael Caro on AM 860, The Voice.
Missed your favorite show? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Catch up on all the action anytime, anywhere. Just head over to our Facebook and YouTube pages to watch and listen to shows.
All right, WNOV family, this is the third segment of our third interview with Maria Lazar. The difference this time is that she is not only Judge Maria Lazar on the second District Court of Appeals, but she is now candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court. And so we've talked a lot today about, what looks like to get politics out of the court, what we should have in a justice when we're thinking about voting, how that person should behave, some of the issues that have come up in the last elections. But how does this court affect people's everyday lives? I mean, we hear all the time about the U.S. Supreme Court on the national news, or we hear about what Congress is doing. or maybe we've seen the local news and we see a circuit court is on in a particular case. But we don't really talk about or see on the news the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's not like when the U.S. Supreme Court has announcements about their court opinions, right? The decisions that they're issuing. I don't recall there being a day on the news when they're talking about the Supreme Court decisions being, carried out.
Well, so you have to take a step back. So most people in the state of Wisconsin, excuse me, are going to go to see a judge on the circuit court. That's
okay.
Where you go. You go to the courthouse. It's a contract. It's a criminal case. It's a homicide. It's,
right.
Something you're watching on the news.
That's what Jermaine and I talked about before, where if I'm being dogged, I got my day in court, I can show up, and Jermaine has done something to me, I'm definitely going to win in that court, right?
So you go to that court and you see that judge who sits there on the bench, and they've got their court reporter, the attorney, the prosecutor. You see that,
and that's
judge.
What most of us know.
That's what everyone sees. Now, when a decision is issued by that judge, and you got to have a respect for those judges, because I was on that bench. It's fast, it's quick, you're making decisions, and they're throwing things at you, and you've got to decide, and you don't have time to go back and do what the Court of Appeals does and read about it for about 2 months and then make a decision and then look really, really good when you're doing it.
Because I need my money back from
You need it right away.
Jermaine, if Jermaine has done me wrong, I need my
So the circuit court
decision.
makes a mistake, or you think it does. You go to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals corrects mistakes. It looks at errors and it says, no, that's not right. The judge didn't apply the right law, the right standard. No, that's not. It doesn't look at the facts. We talked about that before. The facts are the trial court judge, because that person sees you eye to eye. But now the state Supreme Court, like the U.S. Supreme Court, there's 3 levels in the federal system. The state Supreme Court looks at the case in a different way, in that it's not just error correcting. And in fact, they don't correct little mistakes. That's the Court of Appeals job. And that's why it was created, to do that. The state Supreme Court looks at the laws and says more important things about the constitutional validity of a law.
So they can actually overturn a law.
Yes. And for example, it could say, like it recently did, what is the burden of proof when you have a termination of parental rights case?
Okay.
So the Court of Appeals couldn't really answer that, because there was no way to answer right or wrong. And so it was sent up to the state Supreme Court. And the state Supreme Court said, this is what you have to prove in this type of case. So they set the law and the policy.
When we talk about termination of parental rights, it is what it is, right? It's actually ending the parents'
right to have that child ever,
and their guardianship of this child, etc. And so this burden of proof is really what is the threshold, right?
Yes.
For people to be able to make that decision.
So everyone knows, if you're in a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, there are civil burdens which are lower. So in this case, the question was, what was that burden? But the state Supreme Court issues decisions in cases like the abortion one they just did, the redistricting, maybe coming up School Choice Act 10, some other ones that are bigger statewide impact issues. And the importance is they're the final word. So there's no court above them, except if it's a U.S. constitutional issue. Then you can ask that state Supreme Court, the decision of that state Supreme Court, you can ask the U.S. Supreme Court to take it. And again, you're going through that same practice where the U.S. Supreme Court does not have to take any case. And sometimes they will. Sometimes they'll take a case from state courts and it'll come that way. So you may not be the final word. But in 99% of the time, the state Supreme Court is the final word. And that's why it matters to people in the state of Wisconsin, because that's the final say on what the law is. That's why it matters. It's not sexy. It's not in your face every day. You don't think about it when you're going about your life, but you shouldn't have to think about it. You should know you've put someone there who is going to do the right constitutional legal thing, following the law as it is, and you don't have to worry about them.
Right. So we're coming up on, as we're getting closer to the end of this show. For people who want to learn more about you, where do they go?
So, and I said my website, which is judgemarialazar.com. Think 4 A's in there. And it's a there's a lot of information there. You're going to learn a lot about my childhood, things about my parents. You're going to learn about how I decide cases. We've started a page that has some of my appellate decisions, my state circuit court opinions. So you can actually read and see how I write, how I think as a judge, what I've done. You can also read about my judicial philosophy, how I interpret the law, and why you should want someone who does that. You'll also see my resume and CV. You'll see information about me, so what school I went to, and elementary school, and not elementary, but high school, and things like that. You'll just see more information about me. And that's the one big thing I want people to do this time. Now, my campaign probably won't have as much money. I despite the comments, I don't have billionaire buddies who back me everywhere I go. But what I want you to do is to do three things: to listen to what I'm saying, to learn about me, go to my website, learn what I have to say, learn what I've done, learn why it's important, learn about my opponent, the politician from Madison, who also, I don't know if I noted, was the attorney and policy director for Planned Parenthood. Learn about my opponent, learn about what she says in her own words on her own website. And then I'm asking that everyone tell your friends and vote Lazar on April 7th. So listen, learn, vote Lazar, and go to that website.
This is going to come up, and one of the things that happens is that the number of people who vote in the April election really drops off.
Yes.
Right. People have got it in their heads that if there's a presidential election, they will stand in line to vote. Right.
Yes.
If there's a governor's race, they might stand in line to vote. But there's no line when it comes to the Supreme Court.
No.
Right. It's a pretty a fraction of the people who typically vote in November vote in April. Right.
And that's the danger of that election, is that people don't recognize that the courts are one of the three branches. We are a very important part of our foundational system in this country. So I don't understand why people don't want to vote in April. One, you're right, the lines will be shorter. Two, your vote has more impact. If you vote in April, your vote counts more. Don't vote more. Your vote counts more than people who vote in November, because there's many more people voting.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk to your friends, your neighbors. You can tell them, hey, we have a chance to draw this line in the sand and tell people throughout this state that we now want judges who are judges, and that we don't want to hear political ads in judicial campaigns. You're going to hear enough of those in November. You don't need to hear them in April.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a race where you should care this is not a political race. You should be hearing why I am the better judge, why I have the background, the experience, the years on the bench, the integrity, the courage to do this, because I'll tell you, it does take that. And that's what you should be looking for in April.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right. So, and what high school did you go to?
I went to Brookfield East.
Okay. All right.
So
well,
there you go.
Okay. You had left Milwaukee by then. Okay.
Yes, I had. My parents moved out.
I usually ask Jermaine if it's an okay high school, if if it's a Milwaukee one, but since you weren't there,
we'll born in Milwaukee, but
we'll let the
go to
Brookfield
school
part go.
Brookfield.
That's all. So this is a statewide race.
Statewide.
You're going to be
counties,
on the road,
constantly.
And the best way for people to learn about you is judgemarialazar.com.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually go there and tell me if you know of places or people that I should go meet. I'd love to learn that. And I don't know everything that's going on in this state. I'd love to learn that. And then
so you're open to coming and visiting people right here in the community if there are events and other things for people to get a chance to learn about you, and for you to get a chance to learn from them. And
absolutely.
Judge Lazar, it has been so great having you. And I already see this man is touching buttons and moving levers and all. And so I know
we're getting tapped.
What that means is it's time to say peace out. Thank you so much for having been here. Thank you. And we'll look forward to having you. And for the audience, talk to you next week.